This is In Character. I'm your host, Gerard Robinson, Vice President for Education at the Advanced Studies in Culture Foundation. Hello, everyone. This is Gerard Robinson coming back to you again with another session of In Character. As you know, I get an opportunity to talk to wonderful people in a group session, and then we break out to do one-on-ones. And I have Bob with me today. He's going to talk to us more, maybe do a deeper dive on some of the things that he talked about during our group session and maybe tell us some new things. And given the fact that I see snow behind you, some things have continued as usual.
Absolutely. And I'll just say, I found running for public office invigorating, exciting, and absolutely exhausting. And like I mentioned earlier, I had to remind myself that I lost the election because I was looking for a change in the executive branch that was more supportive of public education. And even though I lost my primary, they ended up to be the Democratic and the independent nominees combined for a unity ticket. So the person who beat me ended up having to drop out of the race anyway. I endorsed that ticket, did a public forum for on public education for the ticket, and they won by a few thousand votes. And it was really exciting to see that change. The other thing I find interesting is the general public will often say, "Oh, are you going to run again? Are you going to do this?" Almost like it's a really easy thing to do. And it was 2 years of my life, weekends, nights, everything, and it was exhausting. And my kids, you know, sometimes you're on the phone for 8 hours straight trying to raise money, and sometimes you have a certain amount of money you've raised, and sometimes you don't. But my kids could almost memorize, you know, "Hi, I'm Bob Williams. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor of the state of Alaska," and what that pitch is. But it's a big sacrifice for families. It's a big sacrifice for my wife at the time, or my wife. She's still my wife, but it was as a big sacrifice then. And I don't think people realize just how much it takes and how exhausting it is. But it was a truly great experience.
And you were talking about running for office in a big state. Now, we often think of Alaska, small population, but geographically very large. And you got to cover the state, and impact on family, people overlook that, impact on children as well. Were you still in the classroom at the same time, and how did you juggle that kind of work?
Yeah, it worked out fairly well. I knew I needed to start raising money the year, I started 2 years early so I could raise money in 2013 and 2014 and to make certain limits. So you start early and you work hard. I was still in the classroom. Like I told people, I don't know, not only can I not just leave my job and run for office for 2 years, I don't know anyone else or colleagues that could do that. And so I taught, but I put a lot of time in on weekends. And then just with the summers, it was very conducive to campaigning. My primary was in August. And so I did a lot of work in the summers. And then there's certain events or debates or things that go on, and you pivot sometimes, maybe take a little personal leave here and there. But I was a full-time classroom teacher at the same time I was running. And then I would say the big thing is, when you're running a statewide campaign, you really do need to travel, and you have to have a really strong network of volunteers. And so the part of it was learning to the inside game of politics and convincing people that, hey, I'm a really serious candidate. And it was drilled into me that really early, you have to raise money to be taken seriously. If you are 6 months in and people realize they could just take a few $1,000s and match you, lots of people are going to jump in. And I heard stories of people who were thinking of jumping in the race, but then they saw that, oh, I raised $40,000 and this is a serious candidate, and I didn't have as much competition as I thought I was going to have. But I just think it's a lot of work. But the other thing is you have to raise your money and make it really count. I had probably the best volunteer network of I would compare to any other candidates. I had teacher leaders in communities that were regional I called them just regional directors for my campaign. And I would talk to other candidates running for statewide office, and they'd say, "Oh, I see you're going to Dillingham." And they'd say, "What are your plans?" And I'd say, "Well, I have a 20-year principal and teacher of the year that is leading my efforts there. And she has, 3 days of full-fledged activities for me, and I'm just going to do that." Or I'm going to Fairbanks and I have another volunteer coordinator. And sometimes I had a coordinator call me up and say, "We just had the team meet and we signed you up for a 10K race. We have a costume that you're going to wear. We have an event. You're at a fundraiser and we're having this. And someone mentioned that maybe we should check with you if you're okay with that." And I just said, I trust my volunteer coordinators. And even if I drop dead in the race and it's a 100-mile race, I'll run it as hard as I can. But yes, I'm all in. And so just the caliber of volunteers I had throughout the campaign was incredible. And I think I raised $110,000. But you have to make that look like $500,000. I had a colleague that was a teacher that was really good at video, and we put $35,000 into statewide television commercials that he shot, edited, and they looked really, really good, and they're really strong commercials. And I had people call me up and say, "I was thinking of voting for the other guy, but I saw your last commercial and I'm voting for you." And it got enough where I could be in an airport and people would recognize me. And all my polling showed that I was going to be a much stronger candidate if I could make it to a general election. But I ran a really strong campaign, and it was, I ended up seeing the changes I wanted to see. So I was really pleased with that.
So for those of us who aren't in Alaska and don't know much about politics there, we know that school teachers run for local school board. Some will run for state senate, state rep. Were you one of the few educators to run for lieutenant governor, or is this a practice of people running for the executive branch who had ties to the classroom?
I think I'm fairly rare as an educator running for a statewide office. And I got lots of questions as to why. And one of the lieutenant governor oversees voting rights, and I'm a really strong advocate for voting rights and making voting access as widely available and easy as possible. And there's so many cases in our history as a country where we have suppressed voting rights. We see a lot of those cases going on right now, efforts to do that. So part of that, I knew the role of lieutenant governor, but the other thing that I kept coming back to was I knew that if I was elected, there would be a different governor, and that governor would be a stronger supporter of public education. And I wanted to see a change. And the other great thing about democracy is just that idea is you can always complain about something not being what you want, but when you have to take the message and you have to communicate and you have to say it over and over. I shook tens of thousands of people's hands. And one of my big things was like, "I'm Bob Williams. I want to listen to all Alaskans." And there was, and I think almost everyone shook my hand, was willing to shake my hand and have a conversation. I think there was one person at one time that said something very derogatory and rather profane to me about me being a Democratic bleep to bleep bleep. And the joke within the campaign after that was, "I'm Bob Williams. I want to listen to all Alaskans, except for Raymond. He's kind of a jerk." So it's one of those things that you always, no matter what you're doing, you have to make it a positive experience for everyone who's helping you and everyone who's supporting you. And sometimes you show up to a meet and greet, a fundraiser, and there's a huge crowd. And you better talk to as many people as you can and listen and learn as much as you can. Sometimes only 2 people show up. You better make that as great of experience as you can for those 2 people and work with what you have. And overall for me, it was exhausting and liberating and a really great experience. What I didn't understand at the time was after the primary was over, I told my wife and my kids, if this has a beginning, a middle, and end. What I realized is after I lost the primary, that it wasn't necessarily the end. I still was supporting the ticket and did a lot of things to help that ticket. And then eventually I went to the Capitol and worked as a director in the Alaskan Department of Education for Commissioner Johnson. So what I will say is it expands your experience and it puts you in a new light that not everyone has seen before. And there's a lot of times where people say, oh, well, I can't really see that. After you get out there and you work really hard and you run a really strong campaign, a lot of people can see the leadership in teachers that they might not have seen before.
Good point. Well, Bob, thank you so much for opening up your personal story and political story to both of us. I guess Raymond now may feel a little differently about a few things since based on what he said, but you definitely would have been someone I would have given my vote to. So thanks so much for what you do. Keep up the good work, and I look forward to having you as part of another In Character conversation.
Hey, thank you very much for your time, and you have a wonderful day.
Take care.
Yep.